alcohol was the greatest way to get tears out of a girl at the end of The Bachelor, especially when she was eliminated. If you got a girl that's a little tipsy, she's a little more apt to have her emotions come to the surface quickly, and you needed that, especially when you've had 5 girls leaving. You need to interview each of them before the sun comes up. So make sure they're liquored up before you get them out, or give them a drink right when they're eliminated and have them, get to where you want them.
Are you going through life blind? This is Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. On this podcast, we share knowledge and stories that build human connection while elevating stigmatized societal issues such as mental health, holistic wellness, culture, free speech, and more. All to ensure we show up in the world with our eyes wide open. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Eyes Wide Open. Our guest today, a very special guest, is Michael Carroll. Michael is an entertainment professional, executive producer, and former reality TV producer, having worked on several shows, including The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, Temptation Island, America's Next Top Model, and many, many others. But today, we're here to talk about that experience and your journey from entertainment and in reality TV. So how are you? Thanks for coming in today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Nick. I'm great. Good to do this.
Yeah, I am excited. So, new question I'm asking everybody to get started.
Uh-oh.
What's top of mind for you these days? What's keeping you up at night?
Well, as you could imagine, it's the election. Yeah, like I am.
I knew you were going to say that.
Is that what everyone's saying at this time of year? The election upcoming is very much on my mind and keeping me awake at night. But I feel like there's good momentum towards something good happening. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's not only, you can't even get away from it. It's everywhere. Like it is. And just
luckily I'm
crazy...
one of those news. Yeah. I'm a news junkie and I'm a political junkie. So I'm like eating it up, but I need to take mental health breaks. So just to learn.
Well, funny you say that.
Step away from this. Like I like being the most informed guy in the room about politics. So I just need to sometimes remember there's other things to do. So. Again, we were talking about politics. I'm a total political junkie. So I try to be as informed as possible, but I need to take mental health breaks because it can be a bit much, especially right now.
Yeah, you're spot on. I'm a political junkie too, unfortunately. And I just had a phone call with a friend a few minutes ago. And I was like, I got to take a break because it's going to make me crazy. It's everywhere. It's like, it's literally like, it's everywhere. I can't escape it on social media. I can't escape it on the TV. I can't escape it on my news feed. It's just everywhere. So mental health breaks.
And
let's commit to that.
And being a media person in general, it makes me feel like I'm missing something. There's huge FOMO if I don't know exactly what's happening at all times. Like, what did Kamala Harris just say? What is Trump saying about what she just said? Like, I can't stop. I'm like, well, I got to look and see what happened and what they're talking about with the interview last night. Like, the entire thing is crazy. Yeah.
Oh, me too. I literally I went home. I was at dinner last night till like 10 o'clock. I came home. I had to watch the interview. And then I'm like, I got to go on Truth freaking Social to see if someone's been live truthing it. It's like, and I tell my friends, I'm like, I'm on Truth Social, so you don't have to be.
Oh, there you go. I know. I need to follow you doing that. That sounds good.
Yeah. Oh, man. Good. We'll get through it. So my other favorite question to ask people is, what did you want to be when you were a little kid, and how did that change to where you are now?
I wanted to be an architect, someone who built things. My freshman year, I was an architecture major at the University of Florida. And somehow I naively did not realize how much technical, mathematic, and granular work there was to be had in that field. I was in my head a little bit more designy. I was like, I want to make a pretty building, and that wasn't really what it was. So I kind of migrated out of that and ended up in the communications world. Luckily.
Well, that's a big difference, but I used to be obsessed with go ahead.
Sorry. Moved into the communications world, luckily, and where I still got to build things. It was just, building creative content for television, which is interesting. Yeah.
Which is definitely interesting, which is what we're here to talk about today. So
amazing.
How did you get into reality or producing in general, and then how did you land in the reality unscripted side of things?
When I graduated college in '95, I knocked around San Francisco for the rest of my time, and then finally left in '98 to move to Los Angeles because I really wanted to work in the entertainment field somehow. Being that I was still young and fun, and trying to figure out what I needed to do and wanted to do, I was an actor and a waiter and a model and doing all those things that a lot of people that first get to Los Angeles and have no idea what they're doing do. So I did that for a couple of years, and I was when I turned 30, I said, I really can't do this anymore. I really cannot wait one more table. How do I get into the business? And just randomly, a friend got a job on Project Greenlight. The first season would then,
I was
yeah,
obsessed with that
I
show because I
know, it
wanted
was
to be
so
a
good.
filmmaker back then.
Yeah, so that was 99 or two. No, that would have been 2001 when it aired. He worked on it, and then his boss took him along to a new show called The Bachelor. And he called me and said, "Hey, I know you're trying to get into the business. The executive producer of The Bachelor is looking for an assistant." And I said, "Great. What do they do? What do they do? How does that work?" I had no idea what that meant, but it sounded like a good position and a cool opportunity. So I met with her, and she happened to be like 1 year older than me. She's like a reality TV veteran icon, Lisa Levinson. She's basically known to be the creator of The Bachelor, even though everyone claims Mike Fleiss did it, but she was
Right.
really the behind the scenes person who made that show happen. So we just clicked and hit it off. I convinced her to hire me because I said, why would you want like a 22-year-old kid out of college when you could have someone who's 30 and been around sets and has life experience and has a bigger interest than someone just going, I don't know what I want to do. So we just hit it off, and it worked.
So, what was your understanding of the show? Did you get like a pitch, or were you just like, I don't really care what it is, I'm here to work?
Say again, you broke up.
Oh, what was the pitch, or did you not care? Were you just happy to be breaking into the business? Do you understand the show?
There was no pitch per se for me getting into reality television, especially on The Bachelor, because the first season had just aired, and it was like the biggest thing happening at the moment. Like everyone's talking about the show, and it seemed so ludicrous and ridiculous. Of course, I followed it, and then I became a fan, and I was watching it as I got the job. It was the season finale was coming on, so I was like, okay, I totally know the show, and if it's going again, let's do it. So I got hired between season 1 and season 2. It was a perk for the executive producer to get an assistant. She didn't have one season 1. Yeah, so
Oh,
no big hard sell for me. I was like, and plus reality television was so new at this point. None of us knew what it meant or where it was going to go, but it seemed like a cool entry into the biz. So I was just like, let's go, let's figure this out. It sounds fun.
Yeah, I remember when it first launched, it did seem really fun. I watched I don't think I watched, like, I didn't watch it regularly, but I remember like watching parts of it, finding it so fascinating at the time. But what was it like on that? So you were at that's season 2, right?
I started in between 1 and 2, so I started it in season 2. We started with casting, and then I for that series, and then we went to Bachelorette right after that with Trista. So then it alternated like 2 Bachelors, then a Bachelorette at the time. So I did 9 seasons. So my last season I did as a field producer. I was promoted over 4 years. Was Jen in New York, and she was the person chosen by Andrew Firestone, who was the 3rd Bachelor. So I got to
Oh,
see
okay.
all the OGs. It was really fun.
So how did it change over all those seasons from when you started and it was all fresh and new to, hey, we've got a franchise here that's not only profitable, but it's churning out multiple seasons?
Unbelievable. Yeah, like I said before, it was the genesis of new reality television. Reality television was a thing, but not really even referred to as such. Real World was on,
Mhm.
and the year that we launched The Bachelor, Amazing Race and Survivor started. So the 3 big tent poles that are weirdly still around started all about the same year, 2002, 2001. So there wasn't a huge glut of reality television on, and no one had really done it in this sort of way. If you think about the Real World, it's a follow show. It's a docu-show. It's a documentary at heart, and those had been done before, but nothing along this line where it was a competition, a large cast. None of that had been done, so no one really knew what they were doing, and we, of course, had no idea what we were doing. Thankfully, when I came on, they had at least done 1 season to learn what to do and what not to do in a certain respect.
Yeah.
But we were just kind of like figuring it out. So to be a low person on the totem pole with a little cachet because I was following the executive producer around. That really afforded me a lot of creative input, weirdly, because I was sitting in every meeting that mattered, because I was taking notes for my boss, Lisa Levinson, fielding calls from CAA and from the network. And I was really involved in the nuts and bolts by proxy. But even if I hadn't been, even all of the producers that are on the show were still winging it themselves. So it'd be lots of times people are like, okay, they're just hanging out by the pool right now. Like, what do we do? And they're like, just point a camera at them. Like, it was hugely a docu-follow show at that point. If they weren't on a date, if one girl was on a date with The Bachelor and there were 11 girls back at the house, they were just laying by the pool or napping. And that's all. We just let them do whatever they wanted. And that got really boring really quick. So that maybe lasted 2 seasons of us just doing that, just following them, doing whatever they wanted, until someone got smart and said, we need to make them do things to be interesting. Yeah. At least, even if they're just not on a date, like, they can't just be hanging out. That's so boring. I want to, stab myself in the eye if I watch any more of this. So
well, then they all become friends.
Yeah, and then they're just a bunch of tan, lazy chicks. Like, that's all they did was lay around. Like, so, and they're just drunk the whole time. Because what else are you going to do but lay by the pool and drink? And they're all friends, exactly. So we made them talk. We got to the point where we started putting them in scenarios, even if they weren't on a date or doing something active in the show. They always had something to talk about or something to accomplish.
How would you come up with those scenarios? Did you guys sit around, example, or was it based on? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. When we first started figuring out we needed to have the cast doing something at all times to make the show interesting for us that we're filming it, and of course for the mainly for the audience that's watching it, we just started saying, well, we need to be constantly harping on what the concept of the show is, and that's that these women are here to compete for love with The Bachelor specifically. So let's always talk about that only. Let's not let them talk about much otherwise, unless it somehow refers to why it makes them good for The Bachelor. Like, if you're going to talk about your past, I only want to know about your past that makes you attractive to The Bachelor. Like, your college experience.
Like crafting their story kind of thing.
Yeah, your upbringing with your family. How do you make friends? Tell me about exes. Those are the topics they were allowed to talk about. And if it got derailed into, oh my God, I love shopping, like, we would cut that, off quick. It was like, let's get back on track to only things that matter, which are The Bachelor and how much you want him and how much you don't want these other girls to have him.
Oof.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm thinking about the evolution.
We also, I think I think our show was one of the first shows that figured out that the least amount of stimulation for them outside of that conceit or concept was hugely beneficial to us. So they were not allowed to bring, we made it on season 2 where they were not allowed to bring books, magazines, their cell phone, a computer, nothing. So, and they were not allowed to listen to music while they were hanging out in the house or on a date or anything. We can't clear that music. That's a whole other inside baseball thing, but we don't want them distracted in any way. We don't want them jamming out to Rihanna while they're like supposed to be talking and thinking about The Bachelor.
Right.
We don't want them in the corner reading a book when they're supposed to be thinking and talking about The Bachelor. So they had no stimuli outside of their conversations with the other girls and with The Bachelor and what they were doing and how they were doing it while they were there. That was it.
Now,
and alcohol, of course.
Yeah, we're gonna touch on the alcohol.
The truth serum. Yeah, we had to have the truth serum. Yeah.
That's what you called it on Vice. Yeah, the truth serum, which it is. It is the truth serum.
Absolutely.
Did you when you decided, hey, we're going to kind of take away all of their interaction with the outside world or distractions within there, was that like, how conscious of an effort was that? Because I look at, some of my experiences, and when I look back on it now, I was like, there were some very conscious decisions made on that, and like the isolation and stuff like that really kind of puts you in this environment that's just so manufactured that it's all you can think about. Did you know that level you were doing it, or was it more so like, we just got to stop distracting them so they're talking about this?
At the beginning, it was probably a smidge of both. There was the idea that we didn't want too many distractions for them. Let's take away the things that would. And as a production, you don't want to have to keep up with a phone and a thing and where do we put it and I left it in the kitchen and whatever it might be. I don't need to follow Caitlin's belongings around all day. So there was all, and then also we were thinking, well, this is great because they don't need distractions. They need to be doing what the task at hand, and let's keep them talking and focusing on the Bachelor. But by nature, having done that just one season, season two, we all started realizing how beneficial that was to us and making a cohesive storyline and to making it expeditious towards that happening when we needed it, of course, on a schedule and for the conceit of the show. So it all kind of fell in place. And then, of course, it was never going back. We're never going to, okay, next season, we'll give them their phone. Why not? They can have the Vogue magazine. No, just never is going to happen again. So it just made it easy. It made it, at least keep them semi-focused on what the task at hand was.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Were you involved in the casting process at all in The Bachelor at any point?
Weirdly, when I was an assistant to Lisa Levinson, executive producer, I was involved in the casting process, only by nature of what I've told you before, that I was always her sidekick and I was always there for her. So by nature of us all having started this process together, I was just one of the team, so I could throw in my input at any time. It wasn't like I wasn't allowed to speak because I was an assistant and not a producer. By nature of being in a room that's new and fresh, and we are all kind of collectively trying to make a quality show at the beginning, I had a huge voice. Once I moved up the ladder into different producer positions, yes, you do have a say in the casting process, but not until final casting. Your job is a regular producer. If you're an associate producer, a segment producer, or a field producer, which was the team at the time, was to take care of compartmentalized dates and activities and things that the girls would be doing at the house. You were pre-planning that for the season, so you didn't have time to sit through a casting interview or a casting process or a casting debate. Once the girls were all flown out, the final 50, it used to be we'd fly 50 girls to a hotel at Universal in Hollywood, Sheraton Universal. That was our camp. And we'd all spend the weekend interviewing on camera individually these 50 girls, and that would narrow them down to the final 25, actual 26, because there'd always be an alternate that would get sent home night one, which has got to be awful. Yeah.
Oh, so, I long suspected there's a list of alternates waiting to go if something goes wrong or someone.
Absolutely. And I think that number increased over the years to like 3 people. So they're, just because they wanted, as the years increased and as we got smarter about the show, we not only wanted alternates to be there for night one in case someone got sick or a family emergency or something along those lines, but in case we realized in that first weekend prior to filming episode 1 that someone wasn't as exciting as we thought they were going to be or got cold feet and we knew they weren't going to be good television, we'd swap them out at the last minute because it's really about good television. Yeah, so there's a lot of times people creatively got pulled out, not just because their grandmother died or they got COVID or something. Like they just, got switched out last minute. You had to always be on.
Yeah.
Back to the casting process, the way that producers were always included at casting weekend, which was the final weekend before everyone was, cast to be on the show, is that we all sat in a room and collectively said yay, nay, watched them on camera in another room being interviewed. And so there'd be 20 people watching you be interviewed for Love is Blind without your knowledge. Yeah. And then, we'd bring them into the room and have natural interactions with them. And then when they'd leave, we'd be like, yes, or no, So that's the only way we were involved in creating and in the creative of casting was that final weekend. And plus we needed to get to know them prior to them arriving. And that was the best way. Yeah.
Right. That makes perfect sense. With Love is Blind, it was during COVID. So I did all my stuff virtual, but I often wondered, I'm like, how many people are being sent this video of me or this edited version? Because then we did like a sizzle type interview where they're like, we're going to edit this up to kind of make a little sizzle of you to present to Netflix. And so be vibrant, be bright, wear cool clothes, be well lit, like all of that stuff. But it was all over Zoom. It was so weird. But on the casting
But
piece, did you? Oh, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I
I was
should
gonna
let
say
you ask the question.
no, that's okay. On the casting piece, did you guys have profiles of the kinds of characters you were looking for? Did you have any, things that would be like a hard yes or a hard no, other than being boring or being super dramatic? How did you know what you were looking for, or did you already have kind of like a template of who you were looking for and the types of characters you wanted?
During the casting process, let me quickly touch on the fact that this was 2002, so early 2000s. There was no Zoom interviews. There was no anything of that sort. So in the last casting process, everyone sent in a tape. So by the
Mm,
time they got to us and it was final casting weekend, by nature of us not being able to do anything digitally, the network was sitting in the room at the hotel. So there was 20 people sitting in a hotel suite watching this person be interviewed in the other room via a feed. So when they walked into the room afterwards to meet everyone, they're like, whoa, because you got the network and the agency
right.
and the executive producers and all the producers and everyone sitting there like, this is overwhelming. So it's probably become an easier process at this point because you really, as a cast member now, can do everything from Oklahoma City, and then show up day one in Hollywood and be ready to go, and not having to be flown out, meet the network, all of these things that were so hugely intimidating. So I imagine it's probably an easier process at this point. Not easier once you get there, but getting there easier.
Right.
Um, when we were casting shows like The Bachelor, especially at the beginning, um, we didn't realize at the time in the early seasons that we were going to migrate towards casting per type. We at the time were looking for 25 girls that were lovely, pretty, um, of course, look good on camera, and genuinely and honestly, as far as we could assess, looking for love in the right places and looking for
Mm,
it genuinely. We wanted that to happen because we wanted the right result at the end of the show. But by nature of making the show for a couple of seasons, by I'd say even season three, after having done two Bachelors and a Bachelorette, we started realizing how amazingly beneficial it was for us to have characters, definable characters. The fun girl, the easy girl who's like the party chick, the hoe, the villain, all these girls
I
that
don't mean
pop
to
on
laugh.
camera. Yeah,
It's
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 true.
like, yeah.
It was easy descriptors for us, so those were the ones: the hot girl, the hoe, the villain, the bitch. The name it. We had all of them. You started seeing that those were popping in the edit every time we made the show, and that was what people gravitated towards when they talked about the TV show. So of course, that's what we always wanted and needed
Mhm.
going forward in the casting process. So there'd be times where it's like on our board, we would have a list of Nick, and Nick would have college graduate from University of Oklahoma, blah blah blah. He's now an investment banker. Got in a fight with his girlfriend and got arrested at a bar. Like you'd have all of their sort of hot buttons listed under your name, but then also we would have you in a category of potential, dude bro, or potential villain, or potential, fuck boy, whatever. It would be like you'd be in a group of people that we'd want to consider you as prior to us casting you.
I would love to see what my board looked like.
Who were you? What group were you stuck in?
Well, I have theory on this, and it's talking to you that kind of made me think, oh, this is actually true. And I think that I was cast as like one of the people that would likely get married on the men's side because I had, my stuff together and I had a good job and I had a good career and I owned a house and I was a little bit older. I was 34 at the time. So it was like, I think it was just very much so this thing where I was like, when I look back on it, I didn't at the time, but when I look back on it, I was like, oh, I think I was cast to be that, but I'd also just love to know what else was under that under my picture
You
or
were
whatever during the
probably you
casting
were
process.
probably in the group of real guys. Like, okay, we have hopes for him to make this work. So you're
Mm.
probably in that bucket. But then I assure you that there was also a little mark or sticker on there that said "could crash and burn" or tears or something. Like they wanted to. You always got all the descriptors labeled onto you prior to that. And if certain things didn't apply after your casting process, then those would fall off. But they would keep you in that world just to make our job as creative producers easier, to be honest, because I can always go, oh,
Mm-hmm.
where's the guy? I think he might cry, whatever, or I think he's going to crash and burn, or he'll be crushed when he leaves, or you just needed those moments because you start
Mm.
almost editing in the process of shooting. You're like, where's this moment going? What is going to happen right here? We need something to happen. It's crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you would you like manufacture scenes and stuff at this point? I know they do that now because I participated in them, but when it's like, okay, we need you to do this in this scene, and you kind of plan it ahead of time before they even know that they're going to be in this manufactured scenario.
We never did that in the early seasons of The Bachelor. It took
Okay.
years for it to really come around in reality television. It might have happened on other shows, but my narrow focus was The Bachelor. So
Mm.
I'd say for the first 2 years I was there, and let's call it 5 seasons, there was not much manufacturing of specific scenes. There was manufacturing of a conceit or concept for a date. Like, okay, I know this girl's shy, but he really likes her, so my job as a producer is going to get her to come out of her shell, and we're going to do this by him asking this. So we would prep them
Mm.
in a way to just make sure that the content was at least usable, but
Right.
interesting in some way. So hey, he would love to find out from you this, and you need to find out from him this. So we coach them on how to be a good person on a date, but we are not necessarily setting up some sort of scenario that we were hoping for a specific result out of yet. But we did
And
get to that point.
I actually think that's not a horrible thing. It's when the intention is to like stoke an insecurity and not like overcome it. Like if someone's shy, but you want to put them in a situation where it's going to make them more shy because they're going to get embarrassed in some way, like,
Yeah,
and you
like
do
take
that
them
on
to a comedy
purpose.
club and get called out. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But when you're sitting there and you're like, I'm actually going to coach her out of her shell so that they can get closer, there's something, it's like a little therapeutic, right? There's something genuine about that. It's when it's like malintentioned or in bad faith or to produce, like you said, a scenario where you're in a comedy club and now they're getting called out and they're super shy in front of crowds. And it's just, well, you didn't do anything to help that person or their partner or their relationship there.
Yeah, so that being said, though, we did get smarter, if not crueler, as the years went on, in order to do exactly what you're just saying, where it's like, okay, let's get a specific result quickly, and especially a teasable moment, but also something that will affect the entire process for us going forward. Like, let's make this chick cry by putting her in a place that's going to make her very uncomfortable. Because we know she's either not feasible for the Bachelor, so
Mm.
she's expendable in a way. So let's use her in a way to drive story. Oh, she broke down and cried because she loved him so much, but we were just actually trying to find a way to make her upset or uncomfortable, like you were just saying. It's crazy. We would do anything we could to keep the story driven forward towards the result we were looking for. There were seasons, it got even worse on The Bachelor. Like, there were times that it got really gross after I left. There was a girl, I can't remember her name. She became The Bachelorette, but her boyfriend or former fiance or something like that died in a race car
Oh my
accident because he
gosh.
was a race car driver. So, of course, what was our date? Going to a race car, a race at a racetrack. I was like, why would he? I know exactly why you do that, but it's so gross. That was her
Gosh.
first date, was at a race.
How does that make like not you feel because you didn't do it, but like how do people not feel any empathy or emotion to do that? And I know when we talked initially, you had said like there was a point where you kind of just stopped looking at them as people and you
Yeah.
start looking at them as like props or story points or characters. So man, like I can't imagine doing
At the
that to someone.
beginning of working on reality television, there were often moral dilemmas that were faced. I would often
Mm,
go, "Wow, this is really messed up." But that being said, considering myself a decent person, I also got caught up in the excitement of making television and finding moments where you go, "Gosh, that was amazing! Can you believe that just happened?" You'd feel there was a huge sense of accomplishment to make quality television. Someone crying,
right.
someone fighting, some big moment, that wasn't
Drama.
just two people eating in front of each other, which is so boring. So anytime you had drama or fun moments that you were a part of, that those more dilemmas sort of would slide away. And you'd go, oh,
Mm.
okay, that was so much fun. Oh my gosh. But then you'd have moments to think about it afterwards and be like, okay, I don't know how long I can keep doing this. But okay, I'm signed up for season 6. Terrific. The train just kept running. So the more longer you were in it, the more you were working, it just kind of became a job. And it became, well, I'm working still, and I'm not going to speak up now. I won't be working on this if I say, I don't want to do that,
Right.
It became sort of just your thing. And that became, repetitive tasks and things like that just breed comfort. So it became easy to do. But that being
And
said, towards the end, I was every other season going, "This was really awful," and then I'd be like, "I don't care. They signed up." Like it was back and forth, back and forth.
I do want to, one of the things I want to touch on is that you signed up for it. But before that, one thing I want to say, and this is more for like my audience, and there's people that think, and I've talked to several producers like off the record, and a lot of them are like, hey, like we're just doing a job. Like we have a job to do. And, there's things you do at your job that don't align with your values or align with, or that's like the dirty part of the job. Right. And so while I don't understand how people can do some of these things because of who I am and how I am and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
me too, I consider myself strong moral compass, but I think there's an element there that should be considered, is that this is a systematic thing, not an individual producer thing, and
right.
that I'm fighting against. And so I actually try to look at the producers as like almost tools of a bigger thing. And that's just a systematic um, form of entertainment that hasn't been regulated or hasn't like faced its maker yet in some way to be like, hey, we actually have to do things a little bit more ethically and a little less exploitative. So I almost like don't really blame people. And I think there's bad people that probably don't have a moral compass that make bad decisions. I think I probably met some of them on Love is Blind, but
Yeah,
I also think there are some people that's like, this is just their job. And they're thinking of it as a job, just like you think of your job as a job, whoever's listening right now. And there's times that things go on that really frustrate you and you don't want to do them and you don't think it's the right thing, but you do it because you got to feed yourself.
absolutely. There's a lot to unpack in that question. Honestly, I do think that you could blame producers like myself that were there at the beginning because we were creating out of nothing and we were trying to figure out how
Mm-hmm.
to make television interesting that were just regular people. So that concept had not been done before. No one knew what they were doing. We had no idea what we were doing. So we had to do things that would make people interesting. And some of us, I don't know who it was at the time, figured out how to push people's buttons and set up scenarios that would make them upset or enraged or feel sexual or whatever it might have been. And by nature of that all working, networks loved it. So they were more prone to push that sort of activity or just support the producers that did that and promote them and make them successful. So that sort of became the norm over the years. And then being hired for it now, if you start as a production assistant or someone low on the totem pole, and you watch that activity happening on a set, that's how I have to do it in order to be a producer. This is what the machine is. So the machine is driving it now. Of course, it had to start somewhere and have a genesis and a place to grow. But that was the beginning when we didn't know what we were doing, so we just figured it
Right.
out. But yeah, I mean, everyone knows now if you're going in to be a reality TV producer, you need to be good with people, and good with people could not mean I'm a good person with people. I'm good at manipulating people. Um, or I'm good at relating to people and tricking them or deceiving them. So, but that's the nature of how the business transformed and grew. And by nature of that being done that way, like finding really interesting and quick ways to get reactions or good quality television quickly, it made our schedules compact. It made the networks and the production companies hire people that knew how to do that quickly, to find good quality moments quickly and make television happen faster than it would if you just sat around and watched people do things. So that made the business model shrink. It made show schedules go, from 6 weeks of The Bachelor when it first started to now 4, whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
the whole thing just becomes that's how you have to do it in order for this to work.
Kind of just builds on itself then too. And
Absolutely. So I don't know how a dating reality show, for example, just because that's mainly what we're talking about, could work right now with the issues that you're addressing. Yes, it needs to happen. It needs to, cast members and the process needs to be a little more ethical, and they need to take care more of cast members. But as the machine is built now, it's almost impossible to do. It has to be a
Yeah.
complete overhaul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've noticed
And
specifically oh, go ahead.
it's very interesting. If you look at the British model of reality television, there's huge ethical guidelines that are in place in the UK,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of it comes from a moment where a reality show did a piece on the Queen when she was alive, and they used her words and actions out of context, which is what a lot of reality television is, especially in the edit. And she enacted a law that said that they have to do things a certain way. So I mean, it can be done. The UK has still produced great quality reality television. So there are ways to enact regulations and things that can help a cast and help producers do it more ethically. It can happen. It's just it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I gotta tell you one funny thing, and then I'll share something else. One funny thing, I had a dream a few months ago that Donald Trump decided that he was going to support legislation to regulate reality TV, and then I was in this dream, I was like, oh my god, now he's inviting me to his rally to talk about it, and I just remember I'm like, this can't be, because I'm always like, is there something he could do that would ever make me support him? And I like had this dream, and I was like, this is fucking crazy. Like, there's no way. There's no
Well,
way.
now if that statement you just made makes it into the edit, and a member of his team or he sees that, he might just adopt that policy just because. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he did The Apprentice. He could be like,
Yeah.
I've seen the things we do to people. It's terrible. It's horror. It's some of the worst things you've ever done to people. And I've seen it on The
Because he now wants
Apprentice.
the reality TV vote. Like, that's a huge.
Yeah, I know. I hope no one. I'm going to leave that in because it's something that I shared with the foundation.
I love
but
it.
it was just funny. The other thing too is I think like what I think with production, and I think you're right. Like, I know changing this stuff is really, really hard, and it's a lot of hard work and all that stuff. But I think there's just little things that we can do too. And viewers watch this stuff, as I'm sure you know, and they take whatever they see as if they are watching a documentary or as if they are watching a true following around of people, like it maybe was in the first season, where you're just watching people and act in the way that they are, and they watch it and they just take it so seriously, and they think that people can't be edited out of context, or they think that, well, even if you signed up for this, like what are your thoughts on that? And you signed up for it too. We can take that separate, but to viewers out there who watch this stuff and think it's gospel.
It is amazing that it's still that way, that viewers at home still have this idea that if Nick comes off the show and he was crying and upset about leaving Caitlyn, um, and then people automatically assume, oh wow, what's wrong with that dude? Like, why, have a backbone, figure it out. Like, the way you come off on television is not exactly who you are at all times.
No.
It's amazing to me that people still buy that, or that's what they think, but that's what's fed to them. And by nature of us being so good at what we do, and adding the beautiful music and the beautiful settings and the great editing to keep thoughts very concise and pointed towards a certain direction, it's inevitable that the viewer is going to take away what we feed them.
Yeah.
They're going to say that's exactly who they are. Well, great, because we made it look like that's exactly who they are.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me. But the reason reality television is so successful is because that conceit works and people still buy it. So if people stop buying it, it might go away. So of course the machine's going to feed that conceit as often as they can. Make them hate Nick. Make them love Michael. Who cares if that's the real person or not?
Yeah. And the whole escalation thing, which was the other thing I was going to mention a minute ago. When I had someone on my podcast named Matthew from last season of Love is Blind, and they edited him to make him look like he was walking out of the pods in the middle of dates, and took footage of him just leaving at the end of dates. And they did that to him multiple times, to the point
to make
where
it look like a dick that was leaving and leaving.
Yeah.
Wow.
And people were horrible to him online, and he had since left, and has a new girlfriend, and like he was telling me, he's like, I had to sit there like with my girlfriend who I love and who loves me, and like watch me be represented and hear people say how I'm like abusive and a serial killer and disrespectful of these women. And he's like, I
Right.
was hated for something the world saw me do that I never did. And it like
Yeah.
sat with me at that moment. And I'm like, my God, like I had some stuff out of context, some stuff out of order. And, you know, you watch it back and I'm kind of like, well, that didn't happen that way. And then you're like, wait, did it? And there's like those things. But like to have
Sure.
something like that happen, I just can't even imagine because you don't even get a chance to speak about it.
Yeah, well, to that point, that could have happened in two ways out of my head. One way is that again, the machine is built in a way that everything is so compacted, a schedule and a budget, that they might just need a way to get rid of him on camera quickly, or to wrap that
Mm.
storyline in a cute little package. Let's move it on. Or it might have been an immoral producer on set, or a combination of both. But I am erring on the side that it's probably that I need my character to have an ending. What's an ending that makes sense? Chicks are figuring him out because he's walking out on them. You know what I mean?
Just, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
So, what's the most expeditious way to get this character out of my story?
yeah.
To be
So that
honest.
I want to, yeah, that's fair. And also he didn't drink. He was, he's what do they call that? So living a sober life, right? He's living a sober life. So I know they didn't like that, but that's his story
That's
to
a
tell.
difficult character to produce, right? So it's going to make anyone who doesn't drink, it doesn't lower their inhibitions. So it makes it more difficult for producers like myself to find ways in and manipulate them quickly. Honestly,
So
they're a little too
let's talk
smart.
about the, yeah,
Yeah,
let's talk. And actually, so I picked up on it real quick when we were in the pods and we were there for 15 days. And I remember there was one day where I got a little tipsy and I was like, oh, I can see exactly how this goes wrong for a lot of people. And after
yeah.
that, I would do it like here and there with the guys or in on a date, I'd have some champagne, but like I was very careful with my alcohol consumption after that one day because I was like, I can just see how, you know, it's like if you're at the
I'm ready
bar or
to talk.
something and
What's
that's,
up?
yeah, that 4 is now a 9 because you've got the, you know, it's like that kind of mentality. And so I slowed down after that and I didn't get really more than like maybe slightly tipsy on camera. I still had my wits about me. But
Yeah,
you call it the truth serum. That's alcohol. First
it's
of all,
amazing. Yeah.
brand that and sell it. You should brand that and sell it. And then second of all, tell me your experience using the truth serum as alcohol and why it's used and how you used it and all of that fun stuff. Not so fun stuff.
You'll absolutely. I mean, we discovered it early on The Bachelor at the rose ceremony, which is the first night when they meet the Bachelor. It's a cocktail party. You know, that was sort of the conceit. Like, what do people do at that age? They go to cocktail parties or they hang out and have cocktails. And then quickly we realized that the more liquored up people were, the more apt they are to show their emotions. Everything's escalated, and the more apt they are to lower their inhibitions and give us what we need and to say things they wouldn't normally say. So of course that's great for us. Let's go for that. You know, it's heightened animated versions of a character that we liked already. So great, they're giving us even more. So alcohol is just readily available, especially on shows like The Bachelor. It's just, you know, if it's a house type show, their fridge is fully stocked, as you realized on your show. And it's just because even if you're not on a date or on a challenge or being in a pod, you still have to be on camera. We're showing the difference between what you're doing and what someone else is doing at this point. So if you're having drinks and being more animated than you normally would be, then all the better for us. So let's keep it readily available.
Mm.
Um, and there'd be times where we'd have a boring cast or have something not happening, so we'd shut the cameras down. Hey, everybody, and producers would come in because
Wow.
we're all friends. Let's have a shot. What's up? We'll turn on some music real quick and jam out, have a shot. Cameras back in, producers back out.
Jeez.
Let's just pump up the party. Like you've just got to fuel. You got to fuel the machine, and alcohol was a great way to do it. And plus, alcohol was the greatest way to get tears out of a girl at the end of The Bachelor,
Mm.
especially when she was eliminated. If you got a girl that's a little tipsy, she's a little more apt to have her emotions come to the surface quickly, and you needed that, especially when you've had 5 girls leaving. You need to interview each of them before the sun comes up. So make sure they're liquored up before you get them out, or give them a drink right when they're eliminated, and have them, get to where you want them.
Wow.
Again, the machine wants the production to move, and the budget doesn't afford you another day of filming. Let's keep going. So
Nor
alcohol does
nor
help.
did it nor does it afford good alcohol, at least in my experience.
Well, it does afford it, but they're never going to buy it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
big plastic handles from Costco were the norm. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. We had El Jimador tequila, which, not what
Oh.
I would choose. Not what I would choose. Well, maybe I used to choose
Yeah.
it when I was younger and couldn't afford anything better, but now it's like, whew,
Absolutely.
that is brutal.
Yeah, but cast members, if that's what's there and that's it, bring it on, right? It's not like you're gonna say,
Yeah.
"No, I'm waiting for Patron." No, it's not happening.
Yeah. So what is one of the things that I've heard you also mention before is producing versus editing. And I think what's
Yeah,
interesting, and because I don't know, I mean, I think like, I only have my experience, what I've heard from others, but like producers are trying to produce a story, but once it goes to editing, what happens? Is your story produced? Is it sometimes completely different than expected? Or is there any say or control or communication between the two parties?
absolutely. So during filming, at the beginning when we first started doing The Bachelor, um, producers did everything. So my job would be to create the date, expedite the date by planning it. I got to book a helicopter. I got to book the Hollywood Bowl. I got to make sure that someone's performing, whatever. I would go on the date. I would interview them at the same time, and then that would all go back to editing. As TV moved on, as reality television moved on and got more successful, they started compartmentalizing these positions. So
Mm.
now there's always a story producer on set, either interviewing the cast or sitting in the control room watching the cast be interviewed or interact just in a regular scene. And those would be that story producer's taking notes for the edit. And it's highlighting hot buttons, hot moments, things that they like and don't. They can highlight it real quick. So then when it goes to the edit with that tape, it's easy for an editor to go, this is a cool moment. This isn't. You're easily transcribing and looking at that footage. At the beginning, they had transcribers that would sit and watch
Oh.
every moment of film that ever happened. So there was a whole bay of like 4 people that were always, when you'd walk by, just watching every moment of tape that was ever shot. So now it's in a place where you've got people editing it as they're watching it. So, and those are the people just sitting in the room. They might not be editors on an Avid machine or something that has the software, but they're just going, oop, highlight, love that, cool moment, teasable moment, super tease moment. Like all these things are happening. So that when me as an editor, I get that information, I just only look at those moments. I
So
don't
you're
look
not
at that.
actually siphoning through the hours and hours of footage.
Absolutely not. And then story producers, as they come out of the field and go to the edit, story producers sit in front of an Avid and cut scenes themselves. So they'll take those moments that they've highlighted and written down as teasable, cool moments or fun story arc moments, the beginning, middle, and end, and they'll cut it quickly themselves and then hand it off to an editor to polish and finish and make cool. And then it's like you've got 2 parties making the edits. You got the story producers who know the story because they were there or have been fed the information via a hot sheet that has been transcribed every day about what moments were great on camera that day, or they were there and watched it and typed it themselves, and that's just going straight to editors. That editors now have become a little less hands-on or creative than they used to be because they're just polishing and making things pretty. And if they need a moment, they'll search
Right.
for it, but they'll often just ask a story producer that's sitting down the hall to find that moment for them. And now technology's in a place where it's
Wow.
like, I need Nick saying, I'm so fucking over this. So I can just type in under Nick's, you know, bucket or Nick's file over this. And I can find any moment you might have said that. Boom, there's that
I
scene.
probably
Cool, there
said
you
that a
go.
lot, actually.
Yeah.
Or
But
that it
I've
was
got
that,
it
or
so
I'm not
quick.
fucking doing this.
Yeah, that. But I need to make it say, I can't wait to do this, as opposed to I'm fucking never doing this. So let's say I can't wait, and I need not fucking doing this, or to make my Frankenbit moment. Those things happen so quickly now. Yeah.
Uh, can you
Whereas
tell
back in the
everyone?
day, you'd have to literally go through beta tapes and go
Ugh.
splice, make it. Now it's digital. Boop, boop, boop. I can match the voice, and I can't imagine what AI is going to do to this business.
Well, I can tell you, Michael, this Riverside that we use to record, I shouldn't say the name because it's free advertising, but where we're recording, they actually have a AI voice right now. Well, they'll go into a video and they'll take my voice and then I can copy in a script and it'll record my voice using AI. It's like 95% how I sound. It doesn't get all the inflections right, but
Right.
if I put a long, and I tried it with like a LinkedIn post that I wrote, I put it in there and I listened to it. I'm like, this sounds like me, except it's a little off on some of the inflections.
That's so
So
crazy.
they can definitely do that.
That's unbelievable. But
Yeah.
imagine it if you're, next year a contestant on Love Is Blind and they want a Frankenbit moment, they can almost create it with AI. They can't create something you
Mm-hmm.
haven't said, so but the AI can search all of the data they have of Nick speaking inside of a computer or in a database and go, boop, let's just make a new conversation.
Oh yeah.
It's easier.
And
It's
an
quick. It can happen in
audience.
a moment, whereas like you used to have an editor doing it for a week. I need Nick
Yeah.
to say all these things. Now it's like, here you go.
And then as an audience member, if it's like a line or two, they wouldn't notice the inflection difference because they don't know me very well, right? But like someone who knows me and
Absolutely.
how I talk and stuff, or myself, would know what those are. That's crazy. I do like, I worry about AI, but we don't have to get into that. I think
I know,
it's
but it's in
gonna
a,
it's
to watch for Frankenbites as a reality TV fan. The astute reality TV fans know that if they cut away from Nick's face in this interview moment right here, and you still hear him talking, that might not be exactly what he said, or that might not be when he said it. But with AI and things coming and technology, there's going to be ways to make your mouth move and make
mm-hmm.
it look like you're saying it on camera. It's going to be crazy.
And it's
Because
gonna
they
be
own your
totally
image
wild.
and your word, so they can't make you say something you haven't and put that in your mouth. But if you said it, they can piece it together and make it, so it's fine. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's so crazy. Well, this
Yeah,
is
it
a good
is.
place to bring up the you signed up for it, which you mentioned a little bit
Okay.
earlier. So, I get that a lot, and I'm not going to preach. I think there are things you do sign up for, but until you go through it and experience it yourself, you don't really know what you signed up for. And there's a lot of reasons behind that, including like the manufactured environment. You don't know that you're going to be stuck in a hotel room for days at a time that you can't leave. You don't know what
Right.
it's going to be like without the normal structure of your life, and being able to take
And
walks,
no
go to the
phone and no
bathroom, and
contact and
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So what do you think about people who speak out and say I was wrong, or I was misedited or misrepresented, and then people that say, well, you signed up for it?
Yeah, and I've left the business for the most part. I still do things like this and I still like being involved, but I don't produce as a
Mm-hmm.
profession. So having left the business, I have a lot more compassion for the cast members, and especially the types of shows that I went through, because I know how specifically manipulative it can be. Um, so now I'm way more less apt to say sorry you signed up for it, because it is, like you said, a whole new world that they're not used to, and it should be a little more transparent for them going in, um, because it's a lot. Uh, but that being said, if I was producing television right now, I might have a completely different opinion, because I
Mm-hmm.
know what I've got to get in 4 weeks, and I know the budget I have to get it. So, do I have the time to walk these people through this and give them a moment when they arrive to show them how things are going to go? And like, even that amount of time is eating into my budget and my schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And to have a psychologist on set and to have all of these things that would help creates a budget model that might not work. So that's a difficult animal. But no, you signed up for it is not something I would often say anymore, because I know what it is to be a cast member on these shows, and it's rough. Sometimes this is, of course, the majority of the time it's an amazing experience, and it's something the majority of the country doesn't and the world doesn't get to do. So yay for you. But the people that have a hard time coming out of it, it's really difficult for me to say,
Yeah.
you signed up for it. Sorry you got screwed, buddy. Fuck off.
Yeah.
It's just not
Yeah.
like that
To
anymore.
like
But
guys like Matthew.
yeah, that's rough. I mean, it's awful to do to someone. So I think going forward, in order for there to be a difference, um, to where it's not that we use the cast as props and just as someone on set to achieve our ending or our finished product. They need to be hired as employees, because that's going to regulate their time
Yep.
commitment, which is great, because it's going to make it a little more sane for them to, exist on a set and not be abused. That would be probably the first thing I would do if I was revising the system. And then transparency as far as because if you have that in place, if you're an employee, you've got to be transparent with what your work requirements are. And that would say, you're not sleeping for and you only get 4 hours to sleep this night. Great, I know that,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm getting OT because I'm going to 2 a.m. because I'm on a date at the Hollywood Bowl. Next morning, I have to go on a second date at 6 a.m. because it's a hot air balloon. This is a schedule-based thing, but I know this, and I'm being, rewarded and paid for it. So
Right.
those things could be laid out. It'd be like a syllabus of your job description if you went to work for insurance company A.
Right.
I think that's
No,
probably the best thing moving forward now, just to start the process of not abusing cast members.
I completely agree. And one of the first things I did once we started the UCAN Foundation was file a charge for myself with the National Labor Relations Board to try and get that classification changed from contractor, which is what they're able to sort of hide behind, and do that, get that changed to employee. So we do get to talk about working conditions. One, obviously, you said wages, overtime, all of that stuff. The other cool thing that where I kind of realized there was something here was when they issued me a W-2 for telling me, or for my tax purposes, after telling me in my contract that I'm a contractor. And when I kind of
Right.
put that together, I'm like, huh. And the reason I think that they did that was because we spent so much time in California, and under California labor law, the amount of time we spent in California, the amount of hours that we were filming / working, we would be legally by the government considered employees. So I think they were kind of like, and I don't know for sure, but like playing out of both sides, like, because we did this in California, you're a California employee, we got to give you the W-2, but we're going to have you sign a contract that says you're a contractor, and hope that the two don't ever
And what
mesh.
we'll do is renew you weekly, so it looks like you're an independent contractor that's not involved for this amount of time, but collectively you are. Yeah.
Yes. And it confused my accountant too, because when I first gave her this, she's like, wait, you worked in California for a time too? And I was like, no, I didn't. I had some contractor work out there. And she was like, well, then you wouldn't have got a W-2. And then when I kind of started doing this, I was like, oh, that's where I figured it out. Thank you to my accountant.
Yeah, because if you're there the whole time, and if you're a successful character and you're being brought back, your collective time on television is enough to make you an employee. But they don't want to pay you for that initially, of course. But the other problem with this whole scenario of let's start paying cast members, making them employees, and giving them rights is that the producers of these shows often do not have those same things. So why is me as a producer as an independent contractor and as a gig employee, should I be concerned about making cast members employees of a TV show when I'm not one myself? So,
well, and I wouldn't, as I've said to the producers who have said that to me, I'm like, I am happy to join you in becoming employees and getting your rights as well, because I think that's totally, it's an unfair balance of power. You switch it from one unbalanced of power to the other, and that's not a way either.
Yeah, the producers of reality television need to be signed into a guild, like the Producers Guild. We've never been allowed in. So until that happens, that would be, it trickling down to cast members is not going to happen. So the first step would probably be, now thinking about it, put reality television as make that a compartment of the Producers Guild. Then we have rights. But then again, that's going to make the whole business model tricky, because it's going to make us have more rights to negotiate, less time on set, all the things that we have now that we're required to do because we're just independent contractors. We can't bitch too much. We don't have a union looking over us and monitoring us. It's going to make the business model that much more difficult, because it takes time and money to do all these things and make things right. So it's a tricky one.
Well, and you can speak better to this than I can, but with the producers that I know, they're always like hustling for that next gig. It's not like they're sitting around saying like, oh, let's figure out how we can form a union or something like that, because you're basically gig workers in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, I was a gig worker for 22 years. I was never, the only time I was hired as an employee of a TV show for longer than 3 months was when I was in talk television for Tyra Banks. I was hired for the year. But that was 2 years out of 22. So every job I did, I was always thinking. And towards the end of the show, you start thinking about, hey, what are you doing next? And you start shaking your moneymaker, looking for your next gig. Yeah, there's not a lot of time to sit around because you're on unemployment or not making money in between shows. You're like hungry to get your next one. It's not like, let me go march for the union.
The reality TV producers union.
Yeah. Can I get all y'all to come out here and march with me on Hollywood Boulevard? Probably not happening. Yeah, so it's a rough one. But we'll see if that happens. I hope it does.
Maybe we'll do that next. I've got that, and then people telling me you should go unionize WWE wrestlers, and I'm like, guys, let me finish this job
I'm good.
first. Like, I gotta let them handle that themselves. So
Yeah,
you
they're
mentioned this
tougher than me.
already. Yeah, exactly. You mentioned this already, but you left reality TV. And before we finish up, and I give you a chance to ask me anything, I just want to get your exit story. Why did you decide to leave reality TV? Do you ever see yourself? Well, you're probably never going to be able to go back because now you speak about it so openly. But how
I
do
could
you?
probably consult on television shows, but they wouldn't have me on a set per se. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, what made you leave, and what are you doing now?
I loved my career in reality television. I had a blast to be a kid, a kid from the South, from a small town to make it to Hollywood and do big things was great. And I got to make a mark in entertainment. It's like, it's a dream. It was great. It was amazing. I got to travel the world and do cool things, meet cool people. I did all this stuff. But I didn't realize until COVID happened, which changed a lot of people's mind about a lot of things, and it's made a lot of us very introspective about what we were doing and what we want to accomplish. Having slowed down from a crazy career like being a reality television producer, once you slow down from something like that and sit around for a year in your house in LA, it made me go, oh, like I just went, oh. It's like when the roller coaster comes to the end and the brakes come on and you go, wow, that was a lot. Like it just made me not want to go back to it, if that makes any sense. You can work 60 hours a week and travel every other week to who knows where and have a blast and keep doing that and sleep for 4 hours a night. But once you slow down from that, you can't do it anymore. You can't fathom going back to it. And then I also realized in a year of sitting home during COVID and not working in reality television that I got to see my friends and family and have a relationship and do things that normal people do. It was almost impossible to do that the 20 years that I was, working. My friends were at work. My friends were cast members and producers, like that was it. You couldn't see anyone do anything and have a real life. So slowing down from it made me not want to go back. And when I went back and did one show after COVID, I said, I think I've had enough. So I just changed life. And there's people, luckily, I feel like that I made the right choice. And mine was purely based on wanting to live a better, more peaceful life and not be so stressed and not fall, chase the dragon anymore. But I think I got out at the right time because the reality television model is changing so quickly, especially because of streaming, that it's just a really difficult, uh, you know, niche to be in at this point. It's really rough. It's hard to get work right now.
Yeah, I remember we chatted about that briefly, and
Yeah.
I guess one last follow up, like how has it changed from your perspective, having lived it and now looking at it? How has it changed?
The reality television model has changed in such a huge way that I don't even know how to address how it changed. But the only thing that I know, basically from speaking to people I worked with and looking at it from afar, based on social media and the amount of people I know looking for work, is that streaming came about way too quickly. The model of streaming is changing entertainment in such a big way and content creation in general that reality television was not thought out well enough about in the way of how that fits into the model. Streaming services are only paying for big tent poles they know that can work because it's a very sub part of their budget. They haven't thought out how to make their budget work with new content in reality. So there's not a lot of tiny little shows happening anymore. There's Love is Blind, there's Survivor, there's The Traders. There's these big ones now, but Netflix is not really going to go, let's make a show about Nick and Michael talking about stuff in the woods. Like, that's not going to happen,
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
it's just creating, and it's getting rid of small cable channels like Lifetime, Style. All of these are drifting away because everyone's, coming together, making big, huge streaming networks, and all those small channels are just going away. So that makes content creation
That's true.
more limited. So it's rough.
And it's like universes. Like you've got the Bachelor universe, you've got the Netflix universe, you've got the 90 Day Fiance universe, the Survivor.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they're just kind of like taking these tentpole brands and just making new shows on those.
Yeah,
And
because
spinoffs.
it's brand recognition and it gets a lot of traction in social media, which is taken over too. So it's social media having changed over 20 years, and also streaming taking over the entertainment business. That's really compartmentalized what successful reality TV is. Not successfully creative, but successfully, in the world of financial world. Yeah. So it's a rough one now. I'm kind of glad I got out at the time.
Good. Well, I'm glad that you did too. So I appreciate you taking this time, but before we go, I like to give people a chance to ask me anything. So I'll turn it over to you, and I'm a little nervous about this one.
What show would you do if what reality show would you do if they asked you to be on it right now?
Oh my goodness. It's kind of funny because up until how everything played out, it would probably have been like, if I hadn't had the experience, probably would have been Love is Blind. Cause like, I kind of think the concept is a good concept. And I think there's so many things that are good about it, and so many things that help combat the struggles of dating nowadays, where you do get to like focus, you get to take the time to get to know someone, all of that kind of stuff. But
Right.
otherwise, I would probably, I don't know if this is more of a competition, but there was The Floor is Lava on Netflix. I really wanted to do that because I used to play that as a kid. But if I was blind to everything, I would say I would probably want to do a dating show. I don't really know which one. It wouldn't be like a Married at First Sight. It wouldn't be. It may be like something like The Bachelor, even though I
Right.
know it's a shit show. But so it's like
Yeah.
hard to say. But maybe
But
I
it's
would also
very
do a competition show.
it's very narrowly focused. It's The Bachelor. You date people, you either get picked or you don't.
Exactly.
You know, it's and that's why it's so successful. It's the pitch in the room is very easy. One dude dates 25 chicks, he picks one at the end. One chick dates 25 dudes, one wins. That's it. There's no and then they're in a pod, and then they have to go here and there, and all these things that are crazy. Yeah, I would if I had to be on any reality show right now, I would be on The Traitors.
I haven't watched it, but everyone talks about it.
It is so good. And knowing how to produce television, I just think I'd be really good at it because I see people. But the cast members also seem, from my perspective, to have a really easy time because at night they go to bed off camera. So I'm like, that sounds great. You're not following them to bed. They go to the castle and you never see them again until morning. So I'm like, at least they get to have their own time. So that sounds nice.
That does sound nice.
My last question for you though would be Kamala or Trump.
Oh God, please don't. I can't. I'm like, I can't stand either of them. I just, I'm lucky I'm in Illinois where it's going to go blue, and I can really vote for whoever I want.
You can just ride that wave, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm actually very partial because I had Jill Stein as a guest on from the Green Party, and she was so nice. And I was just like, she is the U.S.'s grandma, and she's kind of a hippie grandma, and we should listen to her. And she's
absolutely,
and it's like, man.
No, put her and Bernie in the room and see what happens. Yeah.
Oh God. Well, yeah, I was a big Bernie supporter, and despite what you might read on the internet, that there's some people that think I'm like a hardcore alt-right MAGA. There's definitely like I loved Bernie in 2016 and 2020, and I worked on his campaign, but
yeah,
God, it's going to be a wild one.
I know, but stay tuned. I'm sure we'll all be watching the election, talking about it again before it happens. All right. Well, this was fun, Nick. Right. Anything else for me?
Is there any social media or anything you want to share for the audience if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, my Instagram's at the Michael Carroll. 2 R's, 2 L's.
All right. That's awesome. We'll put that link down here in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Nick, it was great.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Eyes Wide Open. If you enjoy the show, the best way to support us is by sharing or dropping a review. For more information and content, check out engagewithnick.com or find me on Instagram at nthompson513. Don't go through life blind. Do the work so you can show up in the world with your eyes wide open.